Edgar Ortega here, Handsome Blind Guy. This is another self-learning episode, and today I'm going to go over all 27 amendments to the United States Constitution. I'm not going to go over each one word for word, but I'm going to give you the gist, the idea, the purpose for each one of the amendments, and so you will know them, you'll have heard them, and then you will understand them. In the wisdom of our founding fathers, they understood that in order to lead to a time when liberty, when equality would come to fruition for real, we would need to adjust things along the way. Of course, this was a new system of government when the Constitution was written, right? And if you build anything new, you try anything new as an experiment, you're going to have to adjust things along the way. And they understood that this would be necessary. And so they made it possible for us to amend or edit the United States Constitution. So each time you think of an amendment, just think of it as an edit to make it better, right? Did it always? Maybe, maybe not. But we fix things along the way. And so we can best execute the ideals within the United States Constitution, as well as the Declaration of Independence, freedom, equality, our ability to make it so that anybody could work towards living the life that they want to create. And that's the wonderful thing about the United States Constitution, and it got better and better and better, working towards those ideals of freedom and equality, and that's what has happened over time. So it's important to learn these amendments. The first 10 make up the Bill of Rights, and then the final 17 were edits that were made after that. Okay, so let's get right into it. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights is both first in order as well as perhaps in importance. The First Amendment protects your freedom to practice your faith. It prevents the government from imposing any sort of religion. It protects freedom of religion, protects freedom of the press, freedom of speech, which is quite important these days, freedom to assemble, and your freedom to petition the government for any grievances you may have. Very important amendment that is very relevant, especially in today in current events. First Amendment. Second Amendment protects your right to bear arms. It's a controversial one. There's lots of debate on how to interpret this amendment. It's very short. It's poorly written, which is probably a lot of the source of the debate these days. But the Second Amendment essentially protects your right to bear arms. Essentially, firearms is what it refers to. The Third Amendment protects you from soldiers being quartered in your house. At the time when the colonists were here in the original 13 colonies, or even in Britain, there'd be an issue with sometimes soldiers quartering themselves within your house. In other words, they'd come to your house and they'd say, hey, we're going to use your house and you're going to put up some soldiers. They're going to eat your food, and you got to put them in your bedroom, give them a bedroom. They're going to use your bathroom without your permission, right? It would just kind of make you do it. So it protects against the quartering of soldiers in peace and wartime. Not something we really have messed with, not something we have a problem with, but that's there. It protects against quartering, all right? So the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, we're at the Fourth Amendment. This is a big one, especially when it comes to application of the law, when it comes to your interaction with law enforcement. It protects against unreasonable searches and seizures, both of you and your home, and it puts certain requirements on what government officials can, with the rules by which they can search your home and search you. To search your home, they need a warrant, and that warrant needs to be based on probable cause, okay? And they need a judge to issue that warrant, and it has to specify what they're looking for and where they're searching, right? And so they can't just come in as they did before, as the colonists had to deal with general warrants, right? This is very much against general warrants. It just kind of give the freedom to come in your house and kind of search for whatever, right? And they might come in your house, search for something, find something against you, and then kind of use that, and that's no good, right? And so this protects your home, it protects your privacy, protects you from being searched as well, and it gives certain rules for that. So when you interact with law enforcement, the Fourth Amendment is a big deal, and it's been a big deal in interpreting how we practice law. Right? Practice the law, how it's enforced, how it's executed. So that's really important. Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizure. Fifth Amendment You're certainly not allowed to be put on trial without first being accused of a crime. And many people know the Fifth Amendment protections of self-incrimination, right? From self-incrimination. You are not required to testify against yourself if you are ever accused of a crime. When you're put on trial, you're not required to testify in court. And you're also not required to say anything if you're arrested, right? That's kind of your right to remain silent, right? We've all heard the Miranda reading. You have a right to remain silent when you are in a custodial interrogation situation. And certainly if you're put on trial, you're not required to go and testify. Now, if you're accused of a crime and you and your lawyer decide it's a good idea for you to testify, that can happen, but you're not required to do that. It protects against self-incrimination. The Fifth Amendment also protects against double jeopardy, right? And what that means is that if you are tried for something and you are found not guilty, right, barring any appeals that would overturn that, once it's final, you cannot be tried for the same crime twice. Now, that's not necessarily true in every case because different bodies of law can prosecute you for the same crime, but not within the same jurisdiction. So there's some exceptions there, but we won't go over those maybe in another video, right? So Fifth Amendment, you can't be put on trial without having committed a crime, right? And you can't testify. Can't be forced to testify against yourself, protect you from double jeopardy. The Fifth Amendment also touches on protecting your property from being confiscated by the government. Goes into this kind of eminent domain issues where the government kind of might take your property for use that would benefit the public. For example, you might have property and they might want to build a road or a highway through there. They can't just come and take it without properly compensating you for it. So that's another thing that the Fifth Amendment protects you from. We're still in the Bill of Rights, Fifth Amendment. Sixth Amendment ensures that it allows you to have a speedy trial by a jury of your peers if you're ever accused of something, and you're also entitled to a lawyer. You're allowed to have counsel. And again, within those Miranda rights, if you can't afford a lawyer, the state will provide representation, provide counsel for you. So no matter what, you're entitled to a defense. So Fifth and Sixth Amendment deal with those Miranda issues, right? You're entitled to a jury of your peers, speedy trial, entitled to a lawyer, right? These are all things. You're also allowed to see the evidence against you, face your accusers, and make a case for yourself, right? So that's what the jury and the lawyer are for, right? That's the Sixth Amendment. The Seventh Amendment applies these same jury rights to civil trials. Now, when it comes to the courts, there's the criminal courts, right? If you're ever accused of a crime, of breaking law, you might go to a criminal court. But there's also civil courts, and this is when damages have happened to one party or another, and they want compensation, right? They want the problem to be fixed. These are called torts. So it's not something where necessarily you broke the law, but there are liability issues where you might be financially responsible for something you might have done or something that somebody did to you, but not necessarily breaking the law. You're entitled to a jury for civil cases. That's essentially what the Seventh Amendment gives you, or allows you to have, or enumerates in there. The Eighth Amendment protects against unreasonable fines, unreasonable bail, and it protects against cruel and unusual punishment. So the punishment has to fit the crime, and we can't punish you in weird ways, unless you like that sort of thing. No, the government can't perform certain punitive applications to as your punishment. So the torture, right? That's not allowed, and there's certain, especially when it comes to capital punishment, some things that they can't do anymore, right? And so they call it cruel and unusual. So Eighth Amendment protects you against excessive fines, excessive bail, and against cruel and unusual punishment. The Ninth Amendment's not one that many of you might know off the top of your head, or that comes up very often, but it's an important one nevertheless. The Ninth Amendment protects you, or rather, it says that you have rights that aren't necessarily written down, right? And in other words, your rights are not limited to those that are written here within the Constitution. And some states will give you actually more rights than are written in the Bill of Rights, right? And they're allowed to do that. They just can't give you less rights than are enumerated within the Bill of Rights within the United States Constitution. In other words, you have rights, and just because they're not written doesn't mean you don't have them. For example, you might be parents, right? You have the right to raise your kids how you see fit, right? That's not necessarily written anywhere, but you have those rights. And so the Ninth Amendment just says these rights that are written here, that are enumerated, are by no means all of the rights that you have. And just because they're not written here doesn't mean that you don't have them, right? That's important. 10th Amendment has to do with the states, right? Anything not addressed in the United States Constitution, it's up to the states to make up the rules of how they want to deal with that, right? Big controversial case recently, Roe versus Wade was overturned, and it's essentially said that this issue is not something that the Constitution addresses, right? There's nothing about specifically abortion that is in the United States Constitution. Some people would debate that, but essentially it gives the states the right to decide on that, right? So the 10th Amendment just says that anything that isn't specifically addressed within the United States Constitution, it's up to the states to decide to do however they wish. So you vote in your state how you want things to go, and that's how it is. As long as it doesn't conflict with anything in the United States Constitution, the states can do it their way. All right, that's the first 10 amendments. Those make up the Bill of Rights. The 11th Amendment simply says that somebody from a state cannot go and sue in the Supreme Court another state, right? Somebody who's not a citizen of one state can't go suing another state without its permission. That's kind of the gist of it. It's not too complicated, but we can study that in more depth in another video. The 12th Amendment provides the process by which we elect our United States president in the case that on election day, or once all the votes are counted, no one has a majority of electoral votes, right? In order to become president, you need a majority of electoral votes. In the case of a tie, the 12th Amendment outlines the process for that when it goes to Congress, and it says what to do in that case, right? The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. Pretty straightforward. Now, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments kind of go together. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment made it clear, first of all, that it's that natural-born citizen clause, right? If you're born within the United States, you are a United States citizen, right? There was a case called the Dred Scott case in which it was said that black people were not United States citizens. So that's one of the bad decisions that the Supreme Court made. But the 14th Amendment makes it clear. If you're born here in the United States, doesn't matter what color you are a United States citizen. It also entitles you to all the privileges that a United States citizen might have. It protects against, it protects your due process, right? If you are ever convicted of something, or accused of something rather, you're entitled to that due process. Kind of goes along with the Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, that sort of thing. Kind of repeats stuff in there. It also gives you equal protections of the states, and the states cannot infringe on the rights that were given to you in the Bill of Rights. And a lot of those rights have been selectively incorporated into the states. The Bill of Rights originally kind of referred only to federal law enforcement, but many of those rights within the Bill of Rights have been selectively incorporated into the states. And so they apply within the states and local law enforcement, things like that as well. Let's see, where are we? 14th Amendment, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. 15th Amendment simply made it so that black men could now vote, right? Still at the time when only men could vote, right? But now it's made clear that black men can now vote. The 15th Amendment gave that, right? So the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment made it clear. It's not that it gave them the right, but it made it more clear that that's the case. We talk about equality and freedom. The more we exercise this and the further we go down history, the better these ideas are executed and shown. Okay, so we're at the 16th Amendment now. The 16th Amendment simply made it so that the federal government could tax you. It passed the federal income tax, and that was the first time that had occurred. So it created the federal income tax. 17th Amendment made it so that the people of a state voted for their senators. Before that, the state assemblies would elect their state senators. Now, of course, you guys know in the Congress of the United States, there's a House of Representatives and there's the senators. The House of Representatives represents each state by population. The more people in your state, the more representatives you're going to have. Makes things fair. But also, there's the Senate, where each state sends 2 senators from their state now and back then, but back then they were elected by the Assembly. And so the 17th Amendment made it so the people of the state elected their senators. And the senators go to Washington in the Senate, 2 from each state, 100 senators, and they represent equal representation of each state, right? So stand between the Senate and the House of Representatives, they represent both by population and by equal representation in the Senate, right? Okay, so 17th Amendment, people elect the senators. Make it simple like that. 18th Amendment, prohibition. It made illegal the consumption, the manufacture, and the sale of alcohol, right? We know about prohibition, and it made making alcohol and selling it illegal across the United States. The 19th Amendment came way too late. It acknowledged the right of women to vote. And so women could vote after the 19th Amendment was passed. Big victory. You see, the closer we get to our time today, the closer we get to those ideas, those ideals that were written in the United States Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, making equality more clear, right? And freedom for everybody. So the more we get down history, the closer we get to those things that we initially aimed for in the United States Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And so 19th Amendment made it clear that women can vote. Okay, so that's a good thing. 20th Amendment simply moved the beginning of the president's term, the elected president's term, to begin from, instead of March, to January. There's that period in November to March. It's kind of awkward period because everybody knew maybe somebody else was coming in. And so that was kind of an awkward, kind of lame duck period. And it shortened that. And so it made the term start in January instead of March. That's all that the 20th Amendment was. The 21st Amendment made the 18th Amendment. You guys remember what it was? Prohibition, right? It repealed the 18th Amendment. So let's start. They tried it. They tried to make alcohol illegal. Was not working out. All right. And so the 21st Amendment simply just repealed the 18th Amendment. You can now buy, sell, and manufacture alcohol after that, right? The 22nd Amendment simply created the terms for the United States president. Before that, there was not anything official saying that a president could not be elected several times for several terms. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, was elected 4 times, 4 terms, right? And so after that, it was made clear that the president could only serve 2 terms. So that's the 22nd Amendment, making it official. The 23rd Amendment gave Washington, D.C. residents 3 electoral votes, right? Before that, they were paying taxes, but they didn't have representation. And so no taxation without representation, of course. And so the 23rd Amendment gave Washington, D.C. 3 electoral votes. That's all that did. The 24th Amendment eliminated the poll tax. See, there were still times when certain groups were trying to make it hard for other groups to vote, right? And so there's this poll tax, and it made it harder for the poor, minorities to vote, and kind of prevented some people from doing that. And so they eliminated the poll tax. It was deemed unconstitutional, and that's correct. So we made things better with the 24th Amendment. The 25th Amendment simply outlined the process by which we would deal with the succession issue of the president in the case that he could no longer function or carry out his duties, or in the case that something happened to him, right? And so it outlined the succession of the United States president should something happen to the president currently in office. So it deals with the president, vice president, that sort of thing. So that's the 25th Amendment. The 26th Amendment, right, we're almost done, simply lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. And the idea was that if you can go to war and fight in our wars, you should be allowed to vote, right? That's a good argument. If you can fight, you can vote. And so the age for voting was lowered from 21 to 18 with the 26th Amendment. And finally, the 27th Amendment simply made it so that Congress could not give itself a raise without first being reelected, right? You couldn't get in the office and then vote yourself a raise and then enjoy the benefits of that. No, you had to be reelected before you can take advantage of that. All right, that's all 27 amendments to the United States Constitution. Did you get them all? Did you know them all? Did you learn some new ones? If not, then watch this video again, right? At least learn one or two of them that you didn't know before. And if you want to learn all of them, you know, that's an easy way to kind of get a gist for what each of the 27 amendments did for the United States Constitution. Thanks for watching this video. Thanks for staying to the end of this. It's really important that you guys know your history. It's important that you know and understand the United States Constitution and other documents so that you can understand what happened in history and how it applies to your life today. There are people that will constantly try to influence you, to tell you things, to tell you that the Constitution is bad, that it's racist. And the fact is that that's far from true. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The Constitution of the United States and the ideas of our founding fathers are what made it possible for us to be free today, what make it possible for us to chase after the life that we want, no matter what color we are, what religion we practice, or whatever it is, right? We all have the freedom now to chase the life that we want, right? And so it's important to know this history. It's important to understand it so that you are not influenced by those who wish to tear it down. And there are groups of people alive today that want to tear down the current system and create a new one. And things they will tell you are simply not true. The Constitution is not bad. It is not racist. It is not harmful. It is a good thing, and it protects us, protects our rights, protects our ability to function as equal citizens and chase after the life that we want. It's really important that we understand our history, and so that we are not influenced by those who have other agendas, right? Who want to tear down the United States and the United States Constitution. We need to preserve these things. We need to know them. We need to know the amendments. We need to know certainly the first 10 amendments to the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We need to know them, all right? So put them to memory, learn them, even if you just learn the gist of them, like I explained in this video. Vitally important. Thanks for watching to the end of this video. Please be sure to subscribe to this channel. Hit the subscribe button, the like button. Send me any comments you want in the comment section, and be sure to watch for me in future videos. Once again, I'm Edgar Ortega, Handsome Blind Guy, and I'll see you, or you'll see me, in future videos.